before you immerse yourself in this deeply moving narrative of unwavering spirit, unexpected kindness, and triumphant return, remember to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and comment below with where you're tuning in from. Your support helps us share more heartwarming stories. The little girl's secret prayer. God, just give my mommy a daddy. A millionaire's life changed forever. Imagine the desperate plea whispered by a little girl. God, just give my mommy a daddy. Her words, unheard by her struggling single mother, pierced the heart of a millionaire witnessing the scene. He thought he was just another stranger, but her innocent prayer, a pure longing for her mother's happiness, unleashes a chain of events that will intertwine their lives forever. What happens when a man of immense wealth and a woman of profound strength are drawn together by a child's unwavering hope, leading to a love that defies all expectations and a family forged by destiny? This is a story about overcoming loss, embracing vulnerability, and the extraordinary power of a child's unspoken wish. Chapter 1. A City of Gray. The city of Miami wore a gray hue on that Monday morning in March. Heavy clouds hung over the towering skyscrapers of the business district, promising a storm that seemed to mirror the internal turmoil of Henry Vance. As he adjusted his navy blue tie over his perfectly pressed shirt, his eyes constantly darted towards the clock on the wall of his small apartment in the Brickell neighborhood. "Lily, my love, are you ready?" he called, trying to keep his voice calm, despite the anxiety gnawing at him. "Just a minute, Daddy," a melodious voice replied from the next room. Henry sighed, running his hands through his brown hair, which was neatly tied back in a subtle bun. The interview at Atlantic Developments represented his biggest chance for a new beginning in months. After his wife left him 2 years ago, taking not only his shattered heart, but also their savings, and leaving him with only debts, he struggled to rebuild his life and provide stability for Lily. The 4-year-old girl emerged at the door, a ray of sunshine in human form, wearing her favorite lilac dress. Her golden hair was adorned with colorful clips, and her light brown eyes shone with that inexplicable wisdom that sometimes startled Henry. "Am I pretty for your new job, Daddy?" Henry knelt down to her level, adjusting a rebellious curl behind her small ear. "You're beautiful as a princess, my love. But do you remember what we talked about today? Daddy's going for a very important interview. You'll have to be very quiet. Play with your Lulu," he said, pointing to the cloth bag the girl clutched to her chest. "And be the best-behaved girl in the world. Can you do that for Daddy?" Lily nodded solemnly, as if receiving a state mission. "I'll be the quietest girl in the whole world, Daddy. I promise." Henry's heart ached. It shouldn't be like this. There should be a grandmother, a nanny, someone to leave Lily with. But since he moved back to Miami, away from Los Angeles and painful memories, he was practically alone. His mother had died 3 years prior, and his father was a wound that never fully healed. 30 minutes later, Henry held Lily's tiny hand as he watched the imposing Atlantic Developments building. The company was known not only for its luxury developments that transformed Miami's skyline, but also for its philanthropy. A contradiction, he thought. Building condos that most Miamians could never afford, and then donating crumbs to the city's social projects. Upon entering the polished lobby, Henry immediately felt the stares. First of surprise, then of barely disguised disapproval. A child didn't belong in that corporate environment, and everyone made a point of communicating that with their eyes and whispers. "Good morning, Henry Hayes. I have an interview scheduled for 9 o'clock, he told the receptionist, keeping his voice firm and professional. The woman looked at him, then at Lily, and finally at her computer screen. "Yes, with the administration department," she replied, unable to hide her discomfort. "3rd floor, room 305. "But Mr. Hayes," she hesitated, lowering her voice. We don't have a daycare service in the building." "I'm not looking for a daycare, thank you," Henry replied with icy politeness. "My daughter will be accompanying me." In the elevator, Lily looked up, her large eyes fixed on her father's tense face. "Daddy, that lady didn't like me." Henry took a deep breath, bending down to her height. "It's not that, Princess. It's just that places like this aren't used to children. But don't worry. You're my special assistant today, remember?" The smile returned to her round face, and Henry felt that familiar wave of love and protection. For her, he would face not only disapproving stares, but the entire world, if necessary. The third-floor waiting room was empty, except for a young man in a suit who looked as nervous as he did. Henry gave him a discreet nod and sat down, helping Lily onto the chair beside him. He pulled a small coloring book and colored pencils from his backpack, placing them gently on the girl's lap. "Daddy, look! There are cameras," Lily whispered, pointing to the ceiling. "It's like in spy movies." Henry smiled, ruffling her golden hair. "It's for security, dear. Now let's be very quiet, okay?" On the 10th floor, in an exclusive room lined with noble wood panels, Eleanor Vance closely watched the monitors. It wasn't her custom to participate in interviews for administrative positions. For that, there was an entire department. But that morning, something compelled her to personally check on the candidates. The truth was, Eleanor, at 37, rarely encountered genuine challenges. As the sole heiress to the Vance empire, she commanded the company with the precision of a Swiss watch. Under her leadership, profits had tripled in 5 years. Business magazines called her the queen of the real estate market, and her reputation as ruthless was whispered in the corridors of competing companies. What no one knew, not even her inner circle of friends, who could be counted on one hand, was that Eleanor carried an emptiness as deep as the ocean that stretched beyond her penthouse windows. An emptiness that began in a childhood marked by her parents' emotional absence, deepened with a failed marriage to a man who abandoned her upon discovering her infertility, and culminated with her father's death 2 years prior, leaving her alone at the helm of an empire, and with no one to truly share her life with. Her gaze swept across the monitor until it settled on the man with the discreet bun and the girl in the lilac dress. Something in that image made her lean forward, the way he spoke to the child, with firmness, but also with unmistakable tenderness. "Who is this?" she asked her assistant. "Henry Hayes, 34, a BA in Business Administration from NYU, MBA in Project Management. He worked for 8 years at Thorne Construction in Los Angeles, rising from junior analyst to project manager. Excellent references, but there's an 8-month gap in his resume. He's applying for the administrative coordinator position. And the girl? His daughter, apparently. We have no information about her." Eleanor frowned. "He brought his daughter to a job interview." "Interview?" "Yes, ma'am. The recruitment team is uncomfortable with the situation." An almost imperceptible smile formed on Eleanor's lips. Uncomfortable. The word her team used when something didn't fit perfectly into their organized boxes. "Cancel my meetings for the next hour," she said, standing up. "I'm going to interview him personally." Henry was explaining to Lily why clouds turn gray before it rains when the waiting room door opened. He expected to see the same recruiter who greeted him the week before for the first test. But instead, a woman appeared who seemed to have stepped directly from the pages of Forbes. Tall, with an impeccable posture, she wore a charcoal gray suit that elegantly contrasted with her fair complexion. Her dark hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders, framing a face with striking features and penetrating dark eyes. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but there was something magnetic about her, a presence that commanded immediate respect. "Mr. Hayes?" she called, her voice surprisingly melodious for someone with such an austere demeanor. Henry jumped to his feet, and Lily, imitating her father, stood up too, firmly holding her cloth doll. "That's me," he responded, extending his hand. "Eleanor Vance," she said, returning his handshake firmly. "I'm the company president." Henry felt as if the floor opened beneath his feet. The president? The owner of the Vance Empire was personally interviewing a candidate for administrative coordinator. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Vance," he said, struggling to maintain his composure. "The pleasure is mine," she replied. And then, to Henry's surprise, she knelt down to Lily's height. "And who is this young lady?" "My name is Lily Hayes, and I'm 4 years old," the girl replied, with the seriousness of a diplomat in international negotiations. "This is Lulu," she added, holding up the cloth bag. "She's 3 years old because I got her when I was 3. A genuine smile lit up Eleanor's face, completely transforming her expression. For an instant, Henry glimpsed a different woman behind the professional facade. "It's a pleasure to meet you and Lulu, Lily," Eleanor said, and then, standing up again. "Mr. Hayes, I'd like to conduct your interview in my office, if you don't mind." It wasn't a request. It was a statement. Henry looked at Lily, worry evident on his face. "My daughter," he began, uncertain. "She's very welcome," Eleanor completed, surprising him again. "Maria," she called, addressing an assistant who had appeared silently behind her. "Could you offer our young guest some juice and some cookies?" In the elevator that took them to the 10th floor, Henry remained stiff, his mind filled with questions. Why was the CEO interested in his interview? Was it a test? Was she looking for a reason to disqualify him for bringing his daughter? The silence was heavy, broken only by Lily's murmur, as she quietly counted the numbers lighting up on the elevator panel. The president's office was exactly as Henry imagined. Spacious, elegant, with a panoramic view of the city. Photographs of imposing developments decorated the walls, interspersed with contemporary artworks. A dark wood conference table occupied a corner, while the main desk, also in noble wood, was positioned with its back to the window, the Miami skyline framing whoever sat there. "Please make yourself comfortable," Eleanor said, indicating a chair in front of her desk. "Lily can sit there." She pointed to a comfortable sofa in the corner of the room, where the assistant had already placed a glass of juice and a plate of cookies. Henry settled his daughter, ensuring she was comfortable, and then sat across from Eleanor, who watched him with an interest he couldn't decipher. "Mr. Hayes," she began, leafing through what he presumed was his resume. "Impressive trajectory at Thorne Construction. Why did you decide to leave?" Henry took a deep breath. It was the question he had feared. "Personal reasons, mainly. I went through a complicated divorce and needed to reorganize my life to take care of my daughter." Eleanor looked up from the paper, her penetrating gaze meeting his. "And the mother of the child?" Henry hesitated. He didn't expect such a direct question about his personal life. "Laura, my ex-wife, decided to pursue other paths that didn't include motherhood," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "She abandoned them?" Eleanor concluded, not as a question, but as a statement. Henry felt his lips compress into a thin line. On the other side of the room, Lily drank her juice, absorbed in her own world, oblivious to the tension that filled the air. "It must be difficult," Eleanor commented. And for a moment, Henry detected something beyond professional coolness in her voice. Something like understanding. "It has its challenges," he replied, regaining his composure. "But also its rewards. Lily is everything to me." A silence settled between them, not exactly uncomfortable, but laden with something neither of them could name at that moment. "Why Atlantic Developments, Mr. Hayes?" Eleanor asked finally. "Besides the obvious reputation of the company in the market," he replied honestly. "I admire Atlantic's commitment to social housing projects and urban revitalization. I believe the real estate market can be transformative when it balances profits and positive social impact. Eleanor tilted her head slightly, as if seeing him in a new light. An idealist, she commented, a slight note of amusement in her voice. A realist, he corrected, with a confidence that surprised himself. Eleanor challenged him with technical questions, hypothetical scenarios, and case analyses that tested his knowledge and experience. Henry answered with clarity and certainty, occasionally glancing at Lily, who was now quietly drawing in a notepad. When the interview was nearing its end, Eleanor asked a final question. How do you balance being a single father and your professional career, Mr. Hayes? Henry reflected for a moment. With a lot of planning, flexibility, and prioritizing what truly matters. I learned that there is no perfect balance, only conscious choices. And the most important choice I make every day is to be present for my daughter, even if that means bringing a 4-year-old to a job interview at one of the biggest companies in the Southeast. A genuine smile, the second that morning, lit up Eleanor's face. An honest answer, finally, she said, standing up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Hayes. Maria will contact you with the results shortly. Henry stood up as well, extending his hand. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Vance. When their fingers touched, something undefined passed between them. A silent recognition, perhaps, or the first invisible thread of a connection neither of them could have foreseen. As he approached Lily to leave, Henry saw she had drawn 3 figures holding hands. One, tall, with dark hair, one medium-sized, with her hair tied back, and a small one with golden hair. In the background, a building resembling the Atlantic Development's headquarters. Who are they, my love? He asked, as he helped her put away the pencils. It's us, Daddy, Lily replied with the simplicity of childhood. Me, you, and the pretty lady with the sad eyes. Henry looked back at Eleanor, who watched the scene with an inscrutable expression. Her eyes, indeed, carried a shadow of sadness that contrasted with her confident posture. Are you ready to go, Princess? He asked, extending his hand to his daughter. Yes, Lily replied. But before leaving, she walked up to Eleanor and held out the drawing. It's for you, so you won't be sad. Eleanor accepted the paper, momentarily speechless. When she found her voice, it was surprisingly soft. Thank you, Lily. It's the most beautiful gift I've received in a long time. Leaving the building, as they waited for the bus that would take them back to their modest apartment in Brickell, Henry wondered if he would have a chance at that company. And why, despite the overwhelming pressure of the interview, he felt strangely light, as if something important had just begun. What he didn't know was that on the 10th floor, Eleanor Vance contemplated a child's drawing, feeling more seen than she had ever felt in her life of successes and riches. What is the significance of Lily's spontaneous drawing of them as a family, including Eleanor, and her simple gesture of giving it to Eleanor? How does Eleanor's hidden sadness and Lily's perception of it create an unexpected bond that transcends their social divide? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 2. Between Two Worlds. Continued. 3 weeks passed since the interview. Henry had almost given up waiting for a response when the phone rang. The formal voice of Eleanor Vance's assistant informed him that he had been hired as the administrative coordinator for the company's social projects sector, with a salary that exceeded his expectations. The start date would be the 2nd week following. There's just one special condition, the woman added excitedly. Ms. Vance would like you to attend a private meeting before officially starting, tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Nautilus restaurant. The Nautilus was one of Miami's most exclusive restaurants, frequented only by the city's business and political elite. Henry frowned, confused by the unusual invitation. A meeting at the Nautilus? He repeated. May I ask the reason? Ms. Vance prefers to discuss it personally, the assistant replied, immediately hanging up. That night, as he tucked her into bed in the small room decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Henry felt torn between the joy of being hired and the apprehension of the mysterious meeting. "Daddy got the new job?" Lily asked, hugging her cloth doll to her chest. "Yes, Princess," he smiled, adjusting the blanket around her. "Daddy's going to work at Ms. Vance's company." The girl's eyes lit up. "The lady with the sad eyes. I knew she'd choose you, Daddy." Henry ruffled her golden hair, thoughtful. "Why do you think her eyes are sad, Lily?" The girl yawned, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "Because she has everything, but she has nothing," she murmured, before falling asleep. The child's simple words echoed in Henry's mind as he prepared for bed. Since when were 4-year-olds so perceptive? And why did the observation about Eleanor Vance bother him so much? The next night, after leaving Lily with the neighbor, a retired lady who occasionally helped out in tight spots, Henry arrived at the Nautilus feeling out of place. His only good suit, the same one from the interview, seemed inadequate compared to the other patrons' attire. The maitre d' examined him with distrust until he mentioned Eleanor Vance's name. As if by magic, the man's expression changed to an almost exaggerated deference. "This way, Mr. Hayes. Ms. Vance is waiting for you in the private dining room." Henry was led through the main dining hall, feeling the curious glances follow him. The private room was on the mezzanine, offering a privileged view of the illuminated city. Eleanor was already there, contemplating the horizon with a glass of red wine in her hand. Seeing him, a discreet smile appeared on her lips. "Mr. Hayes," she greeted him, indicating the chair in front of her. "Thank you for coming. I confess I'm curious about this invitation," he replied, sitting down. "Please, call me Henry." "In that case, call me Eleanor," she retorted, a sparkle of amusement in her eyes. "I thought we should talk before your first official day, not as president and employee, but as people." There was something in the way she said people that caught Henry's attention. As if, for Eleanor Vance, humanity was a distant, almost foreign concept. "About what?" he asked. "Gamba, Dregta." Eleanor swirled the glass in her fingers, observing the movement of the ruby liquid. "About your daughter," she finally replied. "I know you're a single father, Henry, and I know you won't always have someone to leave her with." Henry felt his body stiffen. Was this the end before it even began? Had she called him here to say that, despite hiring him, she couldn't accept the complications of an employee with parental responsibilities? "I understand your concern," he began, carefully choosing his words. "But I assure you that won't affect my performance. I have arrangements to take care of Lily during working hours most days." "Most days," Eleanor repeated, raising an eyebrow. "And on the others?" Henry met her gaze, determined not to back down. "On the others, I'll do whatever it takes. If that means bringing Lily with me occasionally or requesting remote work, then yes, my daughter is my priority, and I don't apologize for that." To his surprise, Eleanor smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed her austere face. "That's exactly why I wanted to hire you, Henry," she revealed. "Your integrity, your honesty are rare qualities in the corporate world." Henry blinked, confused. "I don't understand." Eleanor put her glass down on the table and rested her elbows, leaning slightly forward. "Atlantic's social project sector needs someone who doesn't just see numbers and targets, but people. Someone who understands the value of a community, of a family. And you demonstrated that, not only in your impressive resume, but in the way you interact with your daughter." Henry felt an inexplicable sense of relief wash over him. "So this dinner is to discuss my role in social projects?" "Partially," Eleanor admitted, leaning back. "But I also wanted to propose a solution to your dilemma. Atlantic has a daycare in the administrative building, initially created for the children of our employees. In recent years, we've expanded it to also serve children from the communities where we operate. Lily would be very welcome there. Henry couldn't hide his surprise. A corporate daycare? That's unusual. Atlantic isn't an ordinary company, Eleanor replied with a slight shrug. It was my father's initiative, actually. He believed that calmer parents made more productive employees. Pure business pragmatism, but with positive human results. There was something in the way she spoke of her father, a mix of respect and detachment, that piqued Henry's curiosity. Your father seems to have been an interesting man. Complex would be the word, she corrected, a veil of melancholy momentarily covering her eyes. Robert Vance built an empire, but he lived for work. I learned a lot from him about business, little about life. The silence that followed carried the weight of untold stories. Henry felt an unexpected connection with this powerful woman who suddenly seemed as vulnerable as he felt in his moments of doubt. "And your mother?" he asked, surprising himself with his audacity. Eleanor looked up, and for an instant, Henry saw a lost girl in the businesswoman's eyes. "She died when I was 12. Cancer. My father immersed himself even more in work after that. I was raised by nannies and boarding schools." There was so much Henry wanted to ask, but something told him it wasn't the time. Instead, he raised his glass of water. "To their memory," he simply said, "and to new beginnings." Eleanor raised her wine glass, and the silent toast sealed something between them. Not a friendship yet, but the possibility of one. The dinner passed in a lighter atmosphere. They talked about the company's social projects, about the communities served, about the challenges of integrating social responsibility into the real estate market. Henry impressed Eleanor with his knowledge and vision, while she surprised him with her genuine passion for the projects, something not seen in her public image. At the end of the evening, as they said goodbye at the restaurant entrance, Eleanor hesitated briefly. "How is Lily?" she asked almost timidly. Henry smiled, surprised by her sincere interest. "She's good. She asked about you a few times, actually." "About me?" Eleanor couldn't hide her astonishment. "Yes, she liked you. She said you had sad eyes, but a beautiful smile." The words struck Eleanor like an unexpected revelation. She looked away for a moment, speechless. "Children," she finally murmured with a soft smile. "So honest that sometimes it hurts." "Always," Henry agreed. "They see right through us, don't they? As if our walls were made of glass to them." Eleanor felt lost in thought. When she looked back at him, her expression was different, more open, more human. "Bring her some time to the daycare before your first official day. I'd like her to feel comfortable there," Henry agreed, touched by the consideration. As he watched Eleanor's luxury car drive away, he wondered what kind of boss she would be and why. Despite the distance between their worlds, he felt as if he had found someone who could, one day, truly understand him. What is the significance of Lily's simple observation about Eleanor's sad eyes and beautiful smile for Eleanor? How does Eleanor's decision to offer Lily a place in the corporate daycare and her openness about her own past begin to bridge the gap between their worlds? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 3. The Gala of Appearances. Continued. The first month of Henry's time at Atlantic Developments was a whirlwind of new experiences. The company was larger and more complex than he imagined, with ramifications that went far beyond the traditional real estate market. The social projects sector, though small compared to the commercial divisions, was surprisingly well structured and funded. Lily quickly adapted to the company's daycare. In fact, she seemed to flourish in that environment, making friends and charming the educators with her vibrant personality. The girl had a natural gift for connecting with people, an empathy that Henry sometimes wondered where it came from, considering her mother's abandonment. Eleanor, contrary to all expectations, was a constant presence. At first, her visits to the social sector were explained as strategic oversight, but it soon became clear to the team that there was something more. The CEO never failed to stop by the daycare during those visits, always with some professional pretext, but inevitably ending in lively conversations with Lily. It was never like this before. Martha, the social projects director, commented after watching Eleanor laugh openly while Lily showed her a drawing. In 5 years of working with her, I've never seen her so human. Henry just nodded, equally intrigued by the transformation. The Eleanor who interacted with his daughter was almost unrecognizable. Warm, attentive, approachable. Completely different from the ruthless executive who commanded meetings and negotiations with surgical precision. One particularly hectic afternoon, when Henry was racing against time to finalize an important report, he received a message on his cell phone. It was a photo of Lily in the daycare, asleep over a storybook, with the caption, "Your princess had a full day. Don't worry about the deadline today. E." Henry looked at the message, surprised not only by the gesture, but by the intimacy it suggested. Since when did the company's CEO personally monitor the children in the daycare? And since when did she worry about her employees' deadlines? Later, picking up Lily, he found Eleanor sitting next to his daughter, listening intently as the girl explained the crucial difference between unicorns and common horses. "Daddy!" Lily exclaimed, seeing him, running into his arms. "Aunt Eleanor taught me how to play chess today." "Well, not real chess, but how the horses move." Henry raised his eyebrows, looking at Eleanor, who stood up, suddenly aware of the impropriety of the situation. "I hope you don't mind," she said, a nearly imperceptible blush coloring her cheeks. "I stopped by to check on the new educational program, and I ended up staying longer than I planned." "I don't mind at all," he assured her. "It's good to see Lily so animated. Thank you for spending time with her." Something passed over Eleanor's face, an emotion so profound and intense that Henry couldn't name it. "She's special," Eleanor simply replied. And then, as if suddenly remembering who she was, she squared her shoulders and resumed her executive persona. "Your report is ready, Hayes. The board expects the updated figures by tomorrow." The abrupt transition disconcerted Henry. "Yes, ma'am. I emailed it 20 minutes ago." "Excellent." She nodded formally. "Have a good night then." As Eleanor walked away down the corridor, Lily tugged Henry's sleeve. "Daddy, why is Aunt Eleanor different when she's around other people? It's like she wears a mask." Henry knelt down, leveling his eyes with his daughter's. "Sometimes, my love, people need to protect themselves, especially when they have very big responsibilities. But what is she afraid of?" The question remained unanswered, echoing in Henry's mind long after that day. The weeks turned into months. Spring gave way to summer, and Miami's intense heat punished the city. Henry's work evolved surprisingly. His ideas for social projects were well received by the board, and his humane yet pragmatic approach won the respect of even the most skeptical executives. The relationship with Eleanor developed into something complex, undefined. Professionally, she treated him like any other coordinator, with demands and rigor. But there were brief, precious moments when the masks fell. A late-night coffee when both worked beyond office hours. A casual conversation about books when they met in the company library. A knowing smile during tedious meetings. And there was Lily, the strongest thread between them. The girl adored Eleanor with a devotion that sometimes worried Henry. "She needs a female figure," the daycare psychologist explained when he expressed his concern. "It's natural for her to get attached to a strong, present woman in her life." Present. The word bothered him. How present could Eleanor really be in his life? The social abyss that separated them was impassable. She, heiress to an empire. He, a dedicated employee. But still, only an employee. The reality of that distance became painfully clear on a Saturday night during a charity event organized by Atlantic. As project coordinator, Henry needed to appear. He left Lily with the neighbor and put on his only suit, already beginning to show signs of wear. The event took place at the luxurious Grand Ocean Hotel with the cream of Miami society. Henry discreetly circulated, fulfilling his professional role, when he saw Eleanor across the room. She was dazzling in a long emerald green dress, animatedly talking with a tall, elegant man who kept a possessive hand on her waist. "That's Mr. Philip Thorne," Martha, the social projects director, commented, materializing beside Henry with a glass of champagne. "Heir to the Thorne family from the oil industry. They say he's our boss's new owner." Henry felt something unpleasant twist in his stomach. He forced himself to look away, but not before seeing Eleanor laugh at something the man whispered in her ear. "They make a nice couple," he commented, trying to sound indifferent. "Business dynasties joining forces." Martha watched him with curiosity. "You don't believe that for a second, do you?" "Believe what? That you're really interested in him? Or any of those airs the board pushes on her?" Henry shrugged, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Ms. Vance's personal life is none of my business," Martha chuckled, shaking her head. "For someone so smart, you can be quite obtuse sometimes, Hayes." Before he could question the enigmatic comment, Henry felt his phone vibrate. It was a message from the neighbor. It was a message from the neighbor saying Lily had fallen and cut her eyebrow. Nothing serious, but she needed a few stitches. He quickly said goodbye to Martha and headed for the exit. He crossed paths with Eleanor, who immediately noticed his worried expression. "Henry, any problem?" He quickly explained the situation, already walking towards the parking lot. "I'm coming with you," she said, surprising him. "You don't need to. It's just a small accident, and you're in the middle of an important event." "Important?" Eleanor laughed without humor. "This social circus? Atlantic already wrote the check. The rest is just for appearing in society columns." Before he could protest, Eleanor was already walking determinedly towards the exit, completely ignoring the man she had been talking to moments before. In minutes, she was in her car, a luxurious Audi, with a driver heading to the modest neighborhood where Henry lived. Lily, despite the cut on her eyebrow and her tear-stained face, lit up when she saw Eleanor. "Aunt Eleanor, you came to see me. Look, I got hurt, but I was brave." Eleanor knelt in front of the girl, carefully examining the wound. "You are very brave," she agreed softly. "And you're going to need to be a little braver now, because we're going to the hospital for the doctor to take care of it." At the private hospital where Eleanor took them, vehemently ignoring Henry's objections about costs, Lily was attended to in minutes. Throughout the process, Eleanor remained present, holding the girl's hand during the stitches, telling stories to distract her, surprising Henry with her ability to calm his daughter. "How are you so good at that?" he asked her when they finally left the hospital, Lily asleep in her father's arms. Eleanor looked away and remained silent for a moment before replying. "I always wanted to have children," she responded in a low voice. "It was my biggest dream, actually." There was a pain so deep in that confession that Henry felt his heart clench. And what happened? Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering her courage. "I found out I can't have children. Severe endometriosis, among other problems. When I told my husband, he asked for a divorce. He said he needed a complete woman to continue the Vance lineage." The cruelty of the words hit Henry like a punch. "What a son of a—" "Mind your language," Eleanor interrupted with a sad smile, pointing to Lily. "But yes, it was exactly that." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions. When they arrived at the simple building where Henry lived, he hesitated before getting out of the car. "Do you want to come up? Have some coffee? Maybe?" The invitation hung between them, loaded with possibilities. For a moment, Eleanor seemed tempted, but then her gaze fell on the formal gown she was still wearing, on the driver waiting discreetly, on the visible abyss between their worlds. "It wouldn't be appropriate," she finally replied. "I'm your boss, Henry." He nodded, swallowing his disappointment. "Of course, I understand perfectly." As he got out of the car with Lily in his arms, he heard Eleanor's voice one last time. "Henry, take good care of this treasure. Some people would give anything to have what you have." As he watched the luxury car drive away, Henry wondered if she was talking only about Lily or about something else. Something they both felt growing between them, but which neither of them dared to name. How do Eleanor's and Victoria's comments at the charity gala publicly humiliate Sarah? And what is the underlying reason for their cruelty? How does Eleanor's raw confession about her infertility and her past divorce affect Henry, revealing a shared vulnerability? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. The next morning, a sunny Sunday, Henry was awakened by insistent knocking at the door. Still groggy, he walked through the small living room, checking on Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in her room, the bandage on her eyebrow a reminder of the previous night's events. Opening the door, he froze in surprise. There stood Eleanor Vance, not the impeccable executive or the elegant socialite, but a woman in jeans, a simple t-shirt, and her hair in a casual ponytail. She looked 10 years younger and infinitely more approachable. "Good morning," she smiled, seeming strangely nervous. I brought breakfast and some medicine for Lily." The doctor mentioned she would need anti-inflammatories. Henry was momentarily speechless, looking at the bags she carried. "This is unexpected," he commented, suddenly aware of the simplicity of his apartment, the scratched coffee table, the walls that needed a new coat of paint. Eleanor seemed to read his thoughts. "It's a beautiful home," she said sincerely. "Cozy, full of life." As they set the table for breakfast together, Henry realized how out of place Eleanor seemed, not because of the simplicity of the environment, but because of the domesticity of the situation, as if she had never participated in a casual family breakfast. "May I ask what truly brings you here?" he inquired, setting up the coffee maker. "Besides the breakfast and the medicine?" Eleanor hesitated, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of the table. "Last night, when I was leaving here, I noticed something," she began, carefully choosing her words. "I noticed that I'm tired of walls, tired of imposed distances, tired of—" "Masks," Henry completed, remembering Lily's comment. "Yes," she agreed, a sad smile on her lips. "Exactly that." Before they could continue, they heard Lily's sleepy voice. "Daddy? Who are you talking to?" The girl appeared at the kitchen door, her hair disheveled, the bandage slightly askew on her forehead. When she saw Eleanor, her eyes widened in surprise, and then her face lit up with a smile that could melt glaciers. "Aunt Eleanor, you came to have coffee with us." "Come here, dear, if you'll have me," Eleanor replied, opening her arms to receive the girl's enthusiastic hug. Henry watched the scene, his heart pounding. Something was happening there, something that transcended corporate hierarchies and social conventions, something that, for the first time in a long time, made him feel hope. The breakfast was surprisingly natural, as if Eleanor had always been a part of these family moments. She listened attentively to Lily's stories about her friends from the children's laughter daycare, and even helped spread jam on toast when the girl had trouble. Later, while Lily watched cartoons on the small TV in the living room, Henry and Eleanor washed dishes side by side. A scene so domestic and ordinary that in its extraordinary contrast with their usual lives, it seemed almost surreal. "You know," Eleanor commented in a low voice. "This is the first time in over 15 years that I've washed dishes." Henry laughed, handing her a glass to dry. "The mighty CEO of Atlantic Development's taming the beast of the kitchen sink." She gave him a gentle nudge with her shoulder, laughing too. "No, it's strangely satisfying." Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to suspend. There was so much to be said, so many barriers to be discussed. Professional, social, personal. But at that instant, with hands wet with soap and spontaneous smiles, they seemed to be just a man and a woman, discovering a connection neither of them expected to find. It was Lily who broke the moment, bursting into the kitchen with an animated proposal. "Can we go to the park? All of us?" "Please, Daddy. Please, Aunt Eleanor." The adults exchanged glances, a silent question hovering between them. It was a significant step to be seen together in public as something resembling a family, to definitively cross the line between the professional and the personal. "If your father agrees," Eleanor finally replied, "I'd love to go to the park with you." Henry's smile was all the answer she needed. That Sunday became one of the happiest days any of them could remember. At the city park, they were just another family among many, playing ball, having a picnic on the grass, feeding the ducks in the lake. Eleanor, far from her high heels and the weight of her last name, seemed a different person, lighter, freer, truer. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in orange hues, Lily fell asleep in Eleanor's arms, exhausted after hours of play. Sitting on a bench by the lake, watching the twilight, Henry and Eleanor finally found the moment for the conversation they had been avoiding. "What are we doing, Eleanor?" he asked, direct as always. She gently caressed Lily's hair, thoughtful. "Honestly, I don't know. I just know that for the first time in years, I feel real, as if near you two, I can be who I truly am, without expectations, without the weight of the Vance name." "And tomorrow?" Henry questioned. "When we go back to the office? When you're the CEO again, and I'm the coordinator? How will what's happening between us work?" The question hung in the air, laden with uncertainties and possibilities. Eleanor gazed at the horizon, where the sun slowly disappeared. "There are company policies against relationships between different hierarchical levels," she admitted. "Policies that I myself helped create to prevent favoritism." "I understand." Henry nodded, a weight settling in his chest. "But," Eleanor continued, turning to face him, "there's also the possibility of internal transfers. The sustainability department needs a new director. Someone with your vision and experience would be perfect." Henry's chest tightened. "Are you offering me a promotion so we can—" "What exactly?" "I'm offering a possibility," she gently corrected. "So we can explore this," she gestured between them, "without compromising anyone's professional ethics." Henry remained silent, processing the proposal. A promotion would mean not only a hierarchical change, but also a financial one. It would mean being able to offer Lily more comfort, perhaps even move to a better apartment. But it would also mean accepting something he wasn't sure he had earned on merit. "I don't want favors, Eleanor," he finally said. "I don't want people to think I got a promotion because I'm involved with the boss." Eleanor smiled, but there was a shadow of sadness in her eyes. "Do you really think I would offer a position of this importance just for personal feelings? The sustainability department is vital to Atlantic's future. Your resume, your experience, and your ideas already naturally qualify you for the position." Henry watched her, perceiving the sincerity in her words. "I need to think," he replied honestly. "Not just about the professional aspect, but all of this is happening very quickly." "I understand," Eleanor nodded, looking back at the horizon. "Take all the time you need." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but laden with possibilities, with futures that until that morning seemed impossible, and that now sketched themselves before them like unexplored paths. Lily stirred in Eleanor's arms, opening her sleepy eyes. "Is this special day over?" she asked, her voice heavy with sleep. Eleanor gently kissed her forehead, near the bandage. "No, dear. I think it's just beginning." What is the significance of Lily's drawings and her innocent questions about Eleanor's sad eyes and mask? How does Eleanor's proposal of a promotion for Henry and his initial hesitation highlight their distinct values and priorities? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 9. Compiling Love. The next morning, the return to reality was like a cold shock. Henry arrived at Atlantic Developments at the usual time, dropped Lily off at the daycare, and went to his department, feeling as if he were living in two parallel worlds. The idyllic Sunday in the park seemed a distant dream compared to the corporate atmosphere of Monday. Eleanor, as promised, remained professional. When they crossed paths in the corridor, she greeted him with the same formal cordiality she extended to any employee. In her eyes, however, there was a silent message that only the two of them understood. The week unfolded in a delicate balance. During the day, they were merely boss and subordinate. Occasionally, Eleanor visited the daycare, but always with plausible professional reasons. At night, however, discreet phone calls became a routine. Long conversations about work that inevitably drifted to personal topics. Dreams, fears, hopes. Henry talked about his years in Los Angeles, about his marriage to Laura, which began promisingly and ended in betrayal and abandonment. Eleanor shared memories of her lonely childhood, of her absent father, though physically present, of the marriage of convenience that never turned into love. At the end of the following week, Eleanor appeared again in his apartment, this time with tickets to the city aquarium, a plan that made Lily's eyes sparkle with excitement. Sunday was as perfect as the previous one, reinforcing the feeling that something special was building between them. In the third week, what began as a secret shared only between the two of them started to spill over into the workplace. Employees noticed the changed glances in meetings, the discreet smiles, the way Eleanor's voice softened when she addressed Henry. "Is something going on between you and Ms. Vance, isn't there?" Martha directly asked during lunch in the company cafeteria. Henry almost choked on his juice. "What are you talking about?" Martha rolled her eyes. "Please, Hayes, everyone's noticed. The way you two look at each other, how she always mentions your ideas in board meetings, how you're the only one who can make her genuinely smile." "We're just friends," he replied, knowing how inadequate the word sounded. "Friends," Martha repeated skeptically. "You know what they say about the Ice Queen, don't you? That since her divorce, she hasn't allowed herself to get close to anyone. That she dedicated her life exclusively to the company, like her father before her." Henry remained silent, uncomfortable with the turn of the conversation. "Look," Martha continued in a gentler tone, "I'm not judging. In fact, I think you two make a good pair. She needs someone to remind her that there's life beyond these glass walls. And you? Well, you deserve someone who values the incredible man you are." Before Henry could respond, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Eleanor. "My office, now! Urgent!" The terse tone and the unusual request made Henry apprehensive. He quickly said goodbye to Martha and headed for the executive floor, wondering what could be so urgent. When he entered the president's office, he found Eleanor standing by the window, her body tense like a violin string, about to snap. "Did something happen?" he asked, closing the door behind him. Eleanor turned, and Henry immediately realized something was very wrong. Her usually composed face was pale, her eyes red, as if she had been crying. "We need to talk," she said, her voice controlled but fragile. "About us." Henry's heart raced. "What's wrong, Eleanor?" She walked to her desk, picking up an envelope that she extended to Henry. This arrived this morning. Anonymous. Henry opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs of them in the park, at the aquarium, leaving his apartment. In some, Lily also appeared, always close to Eleanor, always smiling at her with adoration. Alongside the photos, a typed note. The board would be interested to know how the CEO spends her weekends. How much is your secret worth, Ice Queen? Blackmail, Henry murmured, feeling a wave of nausea. Yes, Eleanor confirmed, running her hands over her face. Someone found out about us and is trying to extort me. Do you have any idea who it could be? It could be anyone, she replied bitterly. I have many enemies, Henry. People who would give anything to see me fall. The corporate world is a jungle, and I'm a woman in a position of power. That alone makes me a target. Henry approached, instinctively wanting to comfort her, but Eleanor pulled away. We can't continue this, she declared, her voice suddenly cold. It was a mistake from the beginning. I knew the risks and yet… Eleanor, we can't let a blackmailer dictate our lives, Henry protested. We can face this together. It's not that simple, she retorted. It's not just about me. It's about the company, about my father's legacy, about hundreds of jobs that depend on Atlantic's stability, and about us, Henry insisted, about what we started to build. Eleanor looked away, and when she turned back to him, there was a mask of detachment on her face, the same one she used in difficult negotiations. We don't exist, Henry. We never really existed. We were careless. We let temporary emotions cloud our professional judgment. The words hit Henry like a physical blow. Temporary emotions? He repeated, incredulous. Is that how you define what happened between us these past few weeks? How would you define it? She challenged. A few weekends, a few phone calls. We didn't build a life together, Henry. We just played pretend for a few days. And Lily? He asked, his voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Was she just pretend for you too? Because for her, she wasn't. She got attached to you, Eleanor. She trusts you. Eleanor's mask wavered for a moment, and Henry saw the pain behind the professional facade. But then she recomposed herself. Precisely because of Lily, we need to end this now, before she gets hurt even more, Eleanor replied, her voice cold despite her moist eyes. You were hired on your merit, and you will continue in the company on your merit. But our personal involvement needs to end. Henry felt as if the world was crumbling around him. In a few weeks, Eleanor had become such a fundamental part of his life, of his dreams for the future, that the idea of losing her was almost unbearable. And what if I don't accept this? He challenged desperately. What if we fight for something we both know is special? Eleanor's expression hardened. Then I'll have to make difficult decisions, Mr. Hayes, as your hierarchical superior. The veiled threat hung between them like a toxic cloud. Henry recoiled, hurt not only by her words, but by the ease with which Eleanor returned to the role of ruthless CEO. I understand, he finally said, his voice controlled despite the inner turmoil. I will respect your decision, Ms. Vance. He turned to leave, but before reaching the door, Eleanor's voice stopped him. Henry. He turned, waiting perhaps for a sign that all of this was just fear, just an impulsive reaction to the threat. The proposal for the sustainability department is still on the table, she said, her voice professional. Your merits haven't changed. Henry looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, but I'm going to decline. I prefer to be promoted only when everyone is sure it was for competence, not for other reasons. He left the office feeling strangely empty. In the elevator, as he descended to his floor, he tried to process what had just happened. How could something so promising, so full of possibilities, crumble so quickly? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Henry fulfilled his obligations mechanically, avoiding questions about his dejected appearance. When it was time to pick up Lily from daycare, he mustered all his strength to smile at his daughter, not to let her perceive the sadness that consumed him. "Where's Aunt Eleanor today, Daddy?" Lily asked on the way home. "I thought she was going to read stories like she promised." Henry swallowed hard. "Aunt Eleanor is very busy today, Princess. She's a very important person, remember? She has a lot of responsibilities." "But she promised," Lily insisted, her lower lip beginning to tremble. "She said she would never break promises like Mommy used to." His daughter's innocent words pierced Henry like a dagger. Eleanor had, in fact, promised this to Lily during one of their Sundays together, when the girl expressed fear that she would disappear as Laura had. "Sometimes, my love," he replied, fighting back his own tears. "Adults also make mistakes, even when they don't mean to." That night, after putting Lily to sleep, Henry sat on the small apartment balcony, watching the city lights. His phone remained silent. No message, no call from Eleanor. The silence confirmed what his heart refused to accept. The dream was over. At that exact moment, on the 10th floor of a luxurious building on the other side of the city, Eleanor Vance faced her own reflection in the mirror. Tears finally flowed freely after hours of containment. In her trembling hands, a photograph taken in the park. Henry, Lily, and her, smiling, like the family they never had, and now feared they would never have. "It was the right thing to do," she murmured to herself like a mantra, "for everyone's good." But as the night wore on, the certainty of that statement dissolved like mist in the morning sun. What is the significance of the blackmail attempt on Eleanor, and how does it force her to choose between her personal happiness and her corporate empire? How does Eleanor's decision to end their relationship, despite her feelings, reflect her ingrained fear of vulnerability and her past trauma? Share your insights in the comments. Epilogue. Running forever. 1 month passed. 30 days in which Henry and Eleanor maintained a professional distance that bordered on coldness. They met only in strictly necessary meetings. They communicated through formal emails. They avoided being alone in the same room. For those who didn't know the story, they seemed like just a boss and an employee. For those who had noticed their previous closeness, it was evident that something had gone terribly wrong. Lily constantly asked about Eleanor in the first few days. As the weeks passed, the questions lessened. But Henry still occasionally caught her looking hopefully towards the daycare door, as if expecting Eleanor to appear at any moment. "Aunt Eleanor is traveling, Daddy?" she asked one night as he tucked her in. "No, my love," Henry replied, adjusting the blanket around her. "She's very busy with work." Lily frowned, processing the information with the direct logic of childhood. "But she promised to teach me how to play chess, and she hasn't been to daycare anymore." Her big eyes fixed on her father's. "She doesn't like us anymore, Daddy." Henry felt his heart clench. "It's not like that, Princess. Sometimes adults need to distance themselves, even when they like someone very much. Like Mommy did?" Lily's innocent question hit Henry like a physical blow. He took a deep breath, carefully choosing his words. "Every situation is different, Lily. But know one thing. No matter who comes or goes in our lives, you and I will always be a team. Always." The girl nodded solemnly, and then, as if making an important decision, she pulled something from under her pillow, a drawing. On it, 3 stick figures holding hands, a small one with golden hair, a medium one with tied hair, and a taller one with dark hair. "I made this drawing for Aunt Eleanor," Lily said, "so she doesn't forget us." Henry swallowed hard. "It's beautiful, my love. I'm sure she'll adore it. Can you give it to her tomorrow, Daddy? Please." The simple request put Henry in an impossible position. How could he refuse something that meant so much to Lily? But how could he face Eleanor after the way they had separated? "I'll try, Princess," he promised, kissing his daughter's forehead. The next morning, after dropping Lily off at daycare, Henry made a decision. Instead of going to his department, he took the elevator to the 10th floor. He needed to talk to Eleanor, not about them, but about Lily. The girl deserved at least a proper goodbye. After a long wait, when Eleanor finally received him in her office, Henry handed her the folded drawing. "Lily made it for you," he simply said. "She misses you." Eleanor accepted the paper with hands that seemed slightly trembling. Opening the drawing, her professional mask momentarily fell, revealing the genuine emotion she tried to suppress. "She's a talented child," she commented softly. "She is," Henry agreed. "And she's confused. She doesn't understand why you disappeared from our lives so abruptly." "What do you want me to do, Henry?" Eleanor asked, recomposing herself. "Keep feeding impossible expectations? I want you to give her the closure she deserves," he replied firmly. "Lily already lost one mother who simply disappeared from her life. She deserves better than that now." The implicit accusation hung between them. Eleanor looked away, visibly affected. "You're right," she finally admitted. "She deserves better. When can I see her?" "Today at the daycare, at afternoon snack time, at 3. Eleanor hesitated, consulting her mental schedule. "I have a meeting with the legal department at 3. "Reschedule," Henry suggested, with a boldness that surprised both of them. "Some things are more important than meetings, Eleanor." For a moment, it seemed she would reprimand him for the insubordination. Instead, she nodded slightly. "At 3 then." At 3 p.m. sharp, Eleanor entered Atlantic's daycare. Seeing her, Lily's face lit up like the sun after a storm. "Aunt Eleanor!" she exclaimed, running to hug her, completely ignoring the half-eaten sandwich on the table. Eleanor knelt down, receiving an enthusiastic hug, with an emotion she couldn't hide. She led the girl to a quiet corner of the room, where they sat on small, colorful chairs. "My dear, I came to see you because..." She hesitated, searching for words a 4-year-old could understand. "Because I missed you, and because we need to talk about something important." "Are you going to be my mom?" Lily asked, her eyes beginning to fill with tears. The question was like a slap. Eleanor held Lily's hands in hers. "No, dear. Not as your mother. I'll still be around. I still work here. I'll still see you sometimes. I just won't be able to be part of your lives as before." "But I love you, Aunt Eleanor," Lily declared, a tear rolling down her round face. "And Daddy loves you too. He looks at that photo we took in the park every night." The unexpected revelation made Eleanor catch her breath. Henry kept the photo? He looked at it every night? "I love you too," she admitted in a whisper, the words escaping before she could hold them back. "More than I ever imagined possible." "Then why can't we be together?" Lily insisted, with the undeniable logic of children. "Because," Eleanor hesitated, searching for an explanation that made sense. "Because sometimes there are obstacles, complications." "Like in fairy tales?" Lily asked, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Where the princess and the prince have to defeat the dragon before they can be together?" A sad smile appeared on Eleanor's lips. "Something like that. But not all dragons can be defeated, Lily." The girl assumed a thoughtful expression, processing the metaphor with seriousness. "My daddy is very strong and very brave," she finally declared. "He can defeat any dragon. And you are strong too, Aunt Eleanor. Stronger than anyone." Eleanor hugged her back, allowing herself for just a moment to fully feel the love she had been trying to deny for weeks. "You also have to be strong, Aunt Eleanor, to defeat the dragon." As she watched the girl walk away, Eleanor wondered who the real dragon in this story was. The anonymous blackmailer, the board's pressure, social expectations, or her own fears and insecurities. At the daycare door, unbeknownst to her, Henry watched the scene with a heavy heart. Even from a distance, he could see the emotion on Eleanor's face, the sincerity of her affection for Lily. How could something so genuine be wrong? With this question pounding in his mind, he made a decision. It was time to confront the dragon, whatever its form. What is the significance of Lily's drawing for Eleanor, and how does it challenge her decision to distance herself? How does Lily's simple logic about dragons and her declaration of love reveal the true emotions at play between Eleanor and Henry? Share your insights in the comments. Epilogue. Running forever. Continued. In the following days, Henry plunged into a silent investigation. Who could be behind the blackmail? Who would benefit from their separation? The answer came from where he least expected. Lily. "Daddy, who is that old man who always looks at Aunt Eleanor in a bad way?" she asked during dinner. "What man, princess?" "The one with white hair and glasses. He comes to the daycare sometimes, but he never talks to the kids. He just watches." The description matched Mr. Victor Hayes, the vice president of the board, and Eleanor's mentor since her father's death. What would he be doing visiting the daycare? After talking with Sylvia, the daycare director, Henry confirmed his suspicions. Victor had pressured employees to spy on his interactions with Eleanor, threatening their jobs if they didn't cooperate. Worse yet, he discovered that Victor had strong financial interests in bringing Eleanor closer to the Sterling family from the petrochemical sector. He was the blackmailer, the dragon they needed to defeat. Convincing Eleanor to meet him wasn't easy. Finally, Henry resorted to the last option. He asked Lily to personally deliver a note to Eleanor. "It's not about us. It's about Victor Hayes and the blackmail. I have proof. Please, meet us at the Almanac Cafe at 7 p.m. tonight." That night, in a discreet cafe, far from the corporate circuit, Henry revealed everything he had discovered. Eleanor, initially skeptical, was visibly shaken. "Victor? No, he's practically family. He was my father's best friend." "A father who tries to control your personal life?" Henry gently questioned. "Who uses blackmail to force you into a relationship that benefits his business?" Lily, seemingly absorbed in her book, looked up. "He's the dragon, isn't he, Daddy?" Eleanor remained silent, processing the child's innocent wisdom. Finally, she turned to Henry. "Even if it's true, what can we do? Victor is powerful. He has allies on the board, influence in the market." "Mrs. Sylvia is willing to testify," Henry responded. "And I'm sure if we investigate further, we'll find other people he manipulated or threatened." "It would be a scandal," Eleanor murmured. "It could shake investor confidence, harm ongoing projects, and free you," Henry completed, daring to take her hand across the table. "Free the three of you." Eleanor didn't pull her hand away, but the vulnerability in her eyes was palpable. "I'm scared, Henry, not just of Victor, but of everything. Of letting go of control, of taking risks, of trusting, of loving and losing, as I've lost everyone I've loved before." "I'm scared too," he confessed. "After Laura abandoned us, I swore I would never allow myself to be so vulnerable again. And then you appeared, with your high walls and your deep soul, and something inside me knew it would be worth risking everything again." "Daddy says courage isn't about not being afraid, but about doing things even when you're scared," Lily declared, with the simple wisdom of childhood. "Are you brave, Aunt Eleanor?" A trembling smile appeared on Eleanor's lips. "I'm trying to be, little one. I'm trying very hard." What is the significance of Lily's spontaneous declaration about Victor being the dragon? How does the discovery of Victor's blackmail and his deep-seated reasons for it change Eleanor's perception of him and her own vulnerabilities? Share your insights in the comments. Well, 2 months later, during a meticulously planned board meeting, Eleanor confronted Victor Hayes with all the evidence they had gathered. Documents, testimonies, even recordings that Sylvia had courageously obtained from recent conversations with him. Richard trusted me to guide her. Victor defended himself, cornered, to protect her from herself. You've always been impulsive, Eleanor, always following your heart instead of reason. My father trusted you to support me, not to control me, she replied firmly. And as for reason versus heart, perhaps true wisdom lies in finding the balance between the two. The meeting ended with Victor's immediate removal from the board and the initiation of an independent audit into all the operations he had overseen in recent years. It's over, Eleanor murmured to Henry when they were alone in the room. The dragon has been defeated. And now? He asked, taking her hands in his. Now, Eleanor replied. It's time to keep a promise to a certain 4-year-old princess, if you're ready. I'm ready, Henry confirmed. And for the first time in a long time, he saw the future as a promise, not a threat. 6 months later, the colonial mansion on the outskirts of Miami was decorated with white and lilac flowers for an intimate ceremony. Only close friends and family were invited, a conscious decision by the couple who, after so much turmoil, desired privacy for their special moment. Lily, now 5, was radiant in her lilac bridesmaid dress, like a princess cloud, in her own words. Her golden hair, adorned with small white flowers, shone in the afternoon sun. Henry waited at the improvised altar in the garden, his heart pounding with almost unbearable happiness. The past few months had brought transformations. Victor's definitive departure from Atlantic, the restructuring of the board, his own promotion to Director of Sustainability and Social Projects. But the biggest transformation was in their personal lives. After facing so many obstacles together, he and Eleanor finally allowed themselves to openly live the love they felt. The soft music announced the bride's arrival. Eleanor appeared on the jasmine-lined path, a vision of elegant simplicity in a classic white dress. No veil covered her face. She wanted to be seen fully, without barriers, on the day she finally allowed herself the absolute vulnerability of love. Lily ran to meet her, handing her a small bouquet of wildflowers she had helped gather. "You're beautiful, Mommy," the girl said, using for the first time the term they had discussed carefully in recent months. Eleanor's eyes filled with suppressed tears. "Mommy," a word she never expected to hear, a title she considered forever out of her reach. "Thank you, my love," she responded, her voice choked with emotion. "Ready to walk me to your father?" The ceremony was simple and deeply personal. Instead of traditional vows, both wrote their own promises. Henry spoke of second chances, of learning to trust again, of building a home based on respect and understanding. Eleanor spoke of tearing down walls, of finding family where she least expected it, of the courage to choose love over fear. When it was time for Lily to deliver the rings, the girl surprised everyone with a small speech she had secretly prepared. "Before, I used to think family was only those who are born together," she declared, with the surprising clarity that always characterized her. "But now I know that family is who we choose to love every day, even when we're scared, even when it's hard." She looked at Eleanor with adoration. "Thank you for choosing us, Mommy." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden after those words. Eleanor knelt, hugging Lily with all the strength of her newly legitimized love. "Thank you for choosing me first, little one," she whispered in the girl's ear. "You both saved my heart." The party that followed was as warm and authentic as the ceremony. Martha raised an emotional toast to the couple, who proved that invisible walls can be torn down when love is true. Mrs. Sylvia, still the daycare director, now expanded under Eleanor's direct supervision, wept openly throughout the celebration. As night deepened, Henry found a quiet moment with his 2 favorite women. Sitting on a secluded bench, they watched the stars beginning to dot the sky. "Happy?" he asked Eleanor, who rested her head on his shoulder, while Lily, already sleepy, rested on his lap. "More than I ever imagined possible," she replied, intertwining her fingers with his. "Did you know that for years I thought I didn't deserve this? A family, unconditional love." "Why?" she asked him softly. "Because I thought I was broken, incomplete." She unconsciously touched her belly, the physical site of her infertility, the source of so much pain in the past. "I thought I couldn't truly be loved if I couldn't give children to a man." Henry squeezed her hand tightly. "You're not broken, Eleanor. You never were. And what you gave to Lily, what you gave to us, is worth more than any biological possibility." "Mommy," Lily murmured, opening her sleepy eyes. "Are we all going to live together now? In the big house?" Henry and Eleanor exchanged knowing glances. The big house? That's what Lily called the new residence they had acquired together. Not Henry's modest apartment, nor Eleanor's luxurious penthouse, but a new beginning, a space that belonged to all three of them equally. "Yes, Princess," Eleanor confirmed, caressing Lily's golden hair. "All together, forever." "Promise?" the girl insisted, the insecurity of someone who had once been abandoned showing through in the simple question. "I promise," Eleanor responded with conviction. "With all my heart." Henry watched the two, feeling a gratitude so profound he could barely contain it. 2 years ago, he was a broken man, trying to rebuild his life with a small daughter in a new city. Now, he was part of something bigger, something complete, something full of possibilities. "You know," he commented, hugging them close, "they say that true love stories never really end." "How so, Daddy?" Lily asked, curious despite her sleep. "They just transform, from one chapter to another, from one challenge to another. But love remains, growing, changing, strengthening." And under the starry Miami sky, 3 once lonely hearts, now intertwined by choice and love, began not an end, but a new and promising beginning.